aggressive.
Why, indeed. Good afternoon, good morning, good evening, wherever you might be in the world. I've been shocked because we're supposed to be live, and there on location in Brazil is Louis, Mark, and Nicola are with us, and Ian as well. And we were just discussing something I've put in the comments whilst I was forgetting to go live. But first of all, we're gonna let's jump to Nicola, because Nicola is busy making a video. What are you making a video about? What have you got to finish? Tell us, Nicola.
Well, finally, the Artbook Vito will be getting a review. So working on it right now. I think I've flown it for a good while now to have an opinion on it. So might as well get that done with and move over to the next review while I do some more testing, tuning, stuff like that to try and get it a bit more dialed in. Definitely needs that.
When you say dialed in, what do you mean? Changing the CG or fiddling about with the PIDs?
No, the PIDs need to be adjusted, both the Vito ones and the plain ones. I did try to do some auto-tuning, which resulted in some weird behavior. So maybe you might have to go back to doing it manually.
Well,
we will see. That's gonna be like a third video probably.
So you started off with the stock PIDs in ArduPilot, is that right?
Yeah.
Just the stock.
They're pretty good. Actually, they're pretty good. The plain ones are pretty good. The only issue I had was when it transitions from hover, and like the last 10 or 15 degrees, it sort of snaps into horizontal like that, and the tail goes, starts oscillating, on the pitch axis for a little bit. You have to dial back the throttle. It stops, then you apply it. Well, doesn't oscillate again, but there's just that wobble there that I have to try and get sorted. Otherwise, plain-wise, it's pretty damn good. The Copter one is okay in calm weather. Definitely needs some attention, or if possible, for some of the PIDs to be adjusted when there's some wind around, because that's been proving to be quite the experience. Trying to keep it in one place with wind blowing. But I guess it is what it is. You yaw it sideways to the wind does a lot better.
Phil Hunter's got a tail sitter, as we can see from his profile picture, and he's saying it's slightly tail heavy, he thinks.
I don't know. I'm still not exactly clear where the CG is on that plane, so could be. I'll have to actually sit down and mark 5 centimeters back from the forward firewall and see where that ends up being, and I guess we'll see. I have the battery pushed as far forward as I can. I have the ESCs to the front, the motors to the front. Autopilot is mounted to the front. Now I already have a video transmitter, a camera, and a servo right on the nose. So it's got quite a bit of weight up there. Hoping should be okay. Good news is it still has that perfect stall handling. It just comes down like a parachute. No tip stalling, no nothing. Just plain or Vito mode. It does vertical landing either way. No surprises there. Very predictable behavior, which is pretty nice. I really do like that about it. It has a lot of shortcomings, has a lot of issues with design, assembly, how it was thought out. But once you get it flying, really, really shines there. Like plane wise, stall performance, brilliant.
Is it? That's interesting.
Yeah. Well, at least with the stabilization running, but
sure.
The plane itself is good enough to actually allow this to happen, because I have planes that even with stabilization, you can get them to tip stall. This thing, you can't.
Is it what is the aerofoil symmetrical, or is it an MH aerofoil, or is it what's the aerofoil they've put on it?
I have no idea, but I know it works, and might be the oversized fins that are helping stabilize it somehow. I'm not exactly certain of the aerodynamics of these things, but something has been done right on this one. If I don't know if it was by chance or it was on purpose, but I absolutely love the way it flies as a plane. Only thing I would add, although I don't know how and if that's going to change its performance, would be for Argbird to actually add some carbon reinforcing to that thing, because as of now it's bare foam and nothing on it.
Okay. No, reinforcing on the outside, but there must be a spar going through it.
Nope.
No spar, just a flexible bit of foam.
With the... you're gonna see in the review. The people that are watching this live would now know this, and I asked this in the review for people to comment before we move on if they see something wrong with the plane with the sun in the background, because you can clearly see something's missing. So yeah, they're gonna be in the know. But it is funny. It is funny, and when you throttle up and it starts to gain speed, every bump off of some turbulence, slight wind, or elevator change makes it flap a little bit. Really, really interesting to look at, and makes you scared to pull on the elevator hard while at speed.
And what do the control surfaces do then when that's happening? Bend?
I don't know. You can't really tell that, from a distance. I assume they do a little bit, but it's still controllable. I mean, the autopilot does a bang-up job of, reining it in. Pretty impressive.
Well, that's it, isn't it? Well, you just think even a couple of bits of flow will ruin in your video, which you're going to go off and make. But you'd think a couple of flat bits of carbon, or even a bit of crossweave tape or whatever. I don't know what. The tape I mean, the window tape that people use, the fiberglass tape.
Okay.
Even some of that then would make a heck of a difference on that. Are you not supposed to coat it in that like we used to do with Zaggies back in the day?
I don't know. I'm certainly not going to. I'm certainly not going to put in that effort.
Okay. Well, then they're so used to taping together. You used to use that stuff, and that used to provide all the stuff.
That would probably help. Laminating would help. If somebody else actually buys it, decides to go down that route, laminating would definitely stiffen it up. But you'd have to be careful with that, because it's not stiff now. So you have to be careful while laminating it so as not to warp it, because you have to press on it, you have to stretch it a little bit to make it fit well, and you run the risk of actually deforming the plane and getting it into some weird C shape or an S shape or something, which would make it interesting to see how it will fly that way. But still, it doesn't have anything in there to stiffen it up. So if you're going to be laminating it, be careful about going about this, not to warp it. Or maybe fiber tape, but fiber tape is heavy as hell.
Yes.
You'd be adding a good, 50 to 100 grams of tape if you have to cover all of that in it.
Well, sometimes you just do the leading edge, and that would make enough of a difference. Or then if you were going to fly combat, yeah, it makes quite a bit of difference, that stuff. And then put it across of it. I can't quite think what the airframe does. Tip to tip and across.
The plane was molded all in one piece, so I assume that's possibly part of the reason why they didn't put in any carbons, because I would assume they were trying to keep the costs down, and making it into a few pieces maybe would have required a few molds. Would have made it the manufacturing process a good deal more expensive, because then you have to like separate. Well, not the fiber tape I have, and we're not talking about the regular tape. We're talking about fiber tape, and that is heavy, definitely heavier than laminate, at least heavier than the laminate I've used back in the day. So I assume that's the reason for the lack of a carbon spar or any sort of spar or reinforcement helmet. And also no hinges, but there's so much else missing from that plane. So that, hinges are definitely one of the last things to complain about.
As Michael, that is the other option there. It's like Michael says, just 1x2 CF strip, So it seems like it's like almost missing from the kit, isn't it? Just that little strip of that carbon fiber, and jobs are good. There we are. There's the tape. Yeah, that's the stuff.
Right. Yeah, that is heavy. That is heavier than laminate. Well, like I said, depends what kind of laminate you're using, the different thicknesses. But the one I've used was pretty light. The fiber tape that I have is
name something else. See if he's got it. What else can we name? See if he can just pull something else out of it. Scotch tape. Scotch tape.
Scotch whiskey.
Scotch whiskey. Graphene rod. Well.
Oh, he's got it.
He's gone to get it. He's gone to get it, hasn't he? Well, you must hurry along and make the video, and we shall all see. And then they will respond to you and say, no, you were. There you go.
Oh, he hasn't got it. But he has vodka. All right. I actually also got the that new thing, the ugly plane, arrived a few days ago with the 3 motors setup.
Oh yes.
The one that Ali is going haywire over.
Is he? Oh, who was it?
I can't recall the name. Let's just call it the ugly one.
Yeah, you didn't upset Ali. Who upset Ali recently? Oh, the chap in Bristol, didn't he upset Ali? So why is he going haywire over that one then?
Because apparently a close friend of his designed the plane.
Right.
And now nobody likes it, and he's feeling like he's being personally assaulted. Yeah.
I'm not sure I'm a big fan of the hinging hatch. I know that's where the flight controller and speed controller goes, and we're never supposed to move it, and it's never going to be opened again until there's a big problem. I'm not sure that hinging the motors.
To be honest, I have not. I've actually seen the plane once in some picture for like 2 seconds. Next thing I know, that thing appeared in my Banggood order list out of nowhere. And a few days later, I actually got a question from my Banggood representative saying, "Would you like to have this plane for a review?" And I'm like, well, why'd you bother asking? It's already shipped. So kind of,
Well, Andrew Newton got one.
Question at this point.
If you look at Andrew Newton's review, he's flying at the single engine version, and it looks particularly underpowered, and he looks to have a pretty massive tip stall with it.
Yeah, I haven't seen any reviews, but people are in a hurry to tell me that it tip stalls and it's unflyable. I'm thinking I'm not gonna be doing the pusher version. It's either gonna be the twin tractor, or it's gonna have 3 motors running all together. See how that works. But as far as I've been told, it has pretty much the same wings as the binary, being designed by a guy who has worked on the binary. So it's sort of the wingspan and the wing size shape is a rip-off, maybe slightly thicker airfoil, but still the same issues, apparently.
Did the binary have those issues? I haven't seen many of
Oh yeah, it would dip stall on a whim. Just you drop the speed a little bit, and down it goes.
Yeah, Andrew's a pretty tidy flyer, and he did put it on its back pretty easily, and he's the sort of fellow that would be able to recover that if it was a
So we'll see. I'm gonna get the ArcBug video out. I'm gonna finish the blog post about it, and I'm gonna get to building this one. But with all that information coming in about it, I'm probably not gonna put any sort of autopilot or flight stabilization or FPV or anything on it, because I rather like my gear working. So I'm gonna sacrifice a receiver, worst case scenario, and just gonna go out and see if I can make it fly manually. If I manage to keep it in one piece for more than one flight, maybe I'll consider putting in. I've got a spare co-pilot that I'm not gonna cry over if something happens, so maybe give that a try in a plane that was not designed by Zocht. See how that goes.
Because they've very much got their preset settings, haven't they? They're very much.
No, it's actually a pretty easy to tune flight controller, because you just rotate some potentiometers to adjust the PIDs essentially, or gains, or whatever they're called, and it worked rather well on the drift. I managed to get it dialed in pretty neatly. Removed all the wobble from the stabilization. It works pretty good now.
Yes, that what is it called? The ugly thing is called the cargo lifter or something, isn't it? Anyway, I can't remember what it's called, but
hold on, let me just get onto the site and see what it was called.
I really wonder what it will be able to lift, and if you give it a name like that, air loader, that's right. So if you give it a name like that, I want to see it lifting quite a chunk of weight, and I can't see it on those tiny wings. I can't see it.
It's a rather expensive bit of kit, actually. I mean, it's like $120 with some sale now. Plug and play version is $190, but for some reason I'm getting the kit version. Okay, we'll have to figure something out to power it.
I think it's quite interesting, isn't it, that it seems to me that the wheels turning, and now if an aircraft really is horrible and it gets several reviews saying it's pretty horrible, or this is wrong, or that's wrong, they're getting shut down pretty quick. It certainly didn't used to be the way. People keep persevering on and muddling through with different things, and then claiming that they're really good, even though we all know they're really bad. But now it seems we're having to change them quick.
It actually, now that I'm looking at it, it has sort of a Zocht look. Only difference is it says Eachin on it, or Eachin, or however you pronounce that. But yeah, as far as I know, it was designed by some guy that left Zocht, took some design ideas with him, and he was actually the one that designed the that other forward wing swept. Swept wing plane that Ali went crazy over a couple of weeks back. Once Matthew crashed his because of some issues with CG, I think. So that was designed by the same guy that did this one. So kind of a trend there. Same person designed crappy planes.
Yeah,
somehow still has a job,
Well, fail upwards. It's the modern way. It is definitely the modern way for failing upwards. We better. Oh, he's gone. I was just going to say we better say hello to. All right. Well, you do need it. It's true, Ash. You do need it. Yeah. I'm not sure you can get enough sleep there, Ash. But all right. Good night to you. Look after yourself, and we'll hopefully speak to you very soon. Squishy, lovely to have you in the comments there. Well, I'm still here. Oh, blast! He's not gone, and I'm talking about him. And Louis, are you there, or are you gone, Louis, in your hotel room? You're there.
I'm here.
There.
All right. I'm gonna be leaving you to it, guys.
All right, Nicola, you look after yourself. See you next week, and look forward to that video. When can we expect that? Tomorrow or the day after?
I'm hoping by the end of the week.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Right. Well,
a few days. I don't want to be overconfident with my time frame here. So a few days. Working on it. So a few days at the most.
Fair enough. All right. We look forward to that video. Look after yourself, mate. Yeah. Take care. Cheers.
You too. See you guys.
Cheers. So now, Louis, you're in Brazil. How was it getting there in the current situation? And have you managed to do any work yet, or have you just arrived?
I've arrived. I've managed to do some work. Yeah, the climate is great. A bit hot, but that's expected. But already managed to do some work now. And with the time difference, now it's 6 o'clock here. And it's already sundown is at 5 o'clock, 5:30, around that. So it's night, and people are on the streets, on the fairs, and having a chopinho, which is a beer, and that's it.
Life's good.
And I was expecting for our criminal friends.
He's moving house. He's moving house today.
Oh,
into a bunker.
He doesn't want to be bothered by the CIA again.
Well, now that we all know where he lives because of that damn video that he published, yeah, he's got to get moving. He's got to keep moving.
Is he moving to the address they think he lives at, just so they can send the post to him? Is that what the plan is?
Do I call him Thelma or do I call him Louise?
Yeah, it's very What's this mate on the airfield called? The other Ron. So which one's Thelma and which one's Louise? Yes, exactly.
So, some say he's been arrested and he'll never be seen again.
Some say, thank goodness.
I really think the guys of New Zealand CIA are way out of their league, handling a YouTube personality like Bruce. And worst of that is that Bruce speaks common sense, and perhaps the guys are not used to hear that with the public exposure that Bruce has. So the guys are they are on completely uncharted territory, the guys of CIA.
Well, I was very disappointed with the data commissioner, or not quite, with the privacy commissioner, I think they call it in New Zealand's response. It was fast. The one I got was fast. It was within a couple of hours. But then they said it was a genuine mistake, which I suppose one is allowed genuine mistakes in life to a degree, but
it's not. It's not the mistake, it's the impact. And the impact is several hundred people have had their privacy breached. It doesn't matter if it's a genuine mistake.
So all right, well, help me understand that then. What?
Because at the end of the day, intent is what you have in a court of law when you kill someone or hit someone or run someone over or something like that. This is a situation where very few companies intentionally go out to breach DPA or data protection or GDPR. It's always a mistake, yet the impact of that mistake is what should drive the the punishment. And to say, oh, someone clicked the wrong button and it's all okay. Well, no, they've breached the GDPR of over 100 people, which means those people now have the potential to receive kickback from a community for doing something. Now, if it wasn't the situation of Bruce actually asked those people to complain and it was people genuinely complaining, those people could now actually be in a position of the person knows who they are and has the ability to contact them. And so it's just because Bruce told them to complain doesn't change the fact they breached their privacy. And as you say, it's a wash under the carpet. That's all it is I suspect a phone was picked up and said, what the hell's this all about with this guy? And he's a complete pain in the ass. We would suggest you ignore it. And that really seems like how this has gone.
There's more, because even under GDPR rules, which are stricter than apparently New Zealand compliance rules of privacy, there are special provisions for government departments. But it's on the page of their compliance or privacy office that first handle the situation with the guy that sent you or breached your confidence. It's there on the page. It was there before. So people complaining to them, they will have a rubber stamped reply, ask CAA. And I think most troublesome on all this situation with Bruce is the CAA guys reaching out for entities, disclosing the name of Bruce, asking for flight logs from Bruce, and this gives us a very troublesome overview of what might be if we have the pay-to-fly schema around the world. So those air whatever guys in New Zealand, this thing has also created some reputational issues for them. The guys, I'm sure the guys are not very satisfied with that CAA memo they sent the CAA sent to them.
It's a key part though, isn't it? If it was the CAA cafeteria, the restaurant that had received the email and said, "Oh no, I'm sorry, the menu is going to look like this next Thursday," and accidentally we've sent the menu to all these other people, it'd be one thing. But this is the safety department we're talking about. The very people that should be able to deal.
Safety or compliance?
That's the big thing, because what we've learned is they are only interested in compliance. But what they're looking to do is go, Buck, you've broke that rule, you're non-compliant, we're doing you. And that's there's nothing about safety in this at all. They are only interested, they made it clear to Bruce actually that you've broke a rule, therefore you're not safe. And that's their eyes, isn't it? They see this as if you break a rule, you're endangering safety.
Sorry, Ian. You broke a rule. You're not compliant with our guidelines. They don't say it's safety.
They don't make the word safety.
It's safety.
You're right.
We assume it's safety, but you're not compliant, because imagine they have a rule that says to fly a drone you must do headstands. If you're not doing an headstand, you're not compliant. It has nothing to do with safety. Sorry, I'm acting as Bruce now. It's nothing to do with safety. It's compliance.
It's compliance.
They have their crazy rules. They have their crazy rules, as good as they or as bad as they might be, and they're going after Bruce, guns blazing, because he didn't comply with their rules, not safety. It's not
the problem they've got is
zero with safety.
They won't like the current situation. It's because the reality is they're struggling to actually have any control in this, and that's the bit I think they really don't like. Because as Bruce has openly said, if it was a pilot, they could withdraw his license, they could stop him doing something, and I think, you know, Bruce has probably opened a Pandora's box here. Whether which way it will go, no one knows. But they've suddenly very quickly realized they don't actually have control. And whilst they can flex their muscles and say this and say that, when it comes down to it, there's actually very little they can do. Now, the interesting bit will be, do they pass this along? Like, for instance, in the UK, it would become a police matter. You know, if you broke the A&O, it's a law, therefore it's a police matter. Now, you can be done by the CAA, but it's still a law. Therefore, they could send the police around to knock on your door at that point. And I'm not sure what the situation is over there. You know, is it a similar situation or not?
No, and besides that, I think they're going to nail Bruce because he didn't have the right color of underwear on that video. And you could not see the color of the underwear on one of those videos. I think that it will be something very stupid, and they'll try to impose him a fine or something according to those compliance methods, even if it's the color of his underwear.
I was thinking, I'm beginning to think Louis got like a Patreon version of the video that the rest of us haven't seen, you know, the underwear version, you know, it's, I think, sadly, I think you're probably exactly right, Louis.
But end of the day, the guys of CAA, their communications department, has a big problem on their hands. No matter, regardless of what happens to Bruce, they have a huge problem. I wouldn't like to be their communications department right now, because they can be nailed very hard by the public opinion on this one. And
you know,
sorry, Gary, just let me finish up.
Yeah, sorry.
I admire and respect Bruce's constraints on not on trying to diffuse the situation. Bruce has been very candid and trying at every step to diffuse the situation. He doesn't want to go head to head with them. He wants to go with this calmly and as peaceful as possible. I'm not so sure if the other guys, from the memos we've seen, if the other guys are on that line too.
I've received...
Problem is the...
Go on, after you. No, well, after you.
I was just going to say, the problem is what Bruce wants, they won't want to give. And what Bruce wants is for them to discuss the matter, which is the right thing to do, to actually engage about what he's done. And in Bruce's eyes, he's done nothing wrong. And I think we'd all agree what he did wasn't unsafe.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, they are never going to take that stance. They're never going to allow to say, you flying that in your garden at 6 foot or whatever it was actually okay. And that's where I think the wall comes up, is they will not move from that point. They will now, they've set their stall in the sand and they're not moving.
I think what I immediately think of, so I sent email sort of with my pretend journalist hat on, saying I'd like a few comments on these things, which was the email and then the email address release, and then the 14-year-old lads. And I sent that to the Prime Minister's office. I sent that to the data people, and I sent that to the CAA. And the data people came back almost immediately, said, look, sorry, we can't answer the other questions because we don't know about that. That's not our remit. But as the data part, this is it. And that response came, I say, within 2 hours, and immediately that puts me as a person, that makes me trust them a little bit. And my comparison, and because Louis is here and I know he loves the subject so much, when I put a freedom of information request into I think it was Sussex Police, I can't remember which police force in the UK, they came back pretty quick. They said, hang on a minute, we'll have a look. And they came back, and they were very polite, and after a couple of emails, they came back with what I want. Not quite what I wanted, but a lot of it. But they responded, and they were polite, and they said, we'll do our best. So immediately that puts me on the back foot, doesn't it? Because you can't argue with that. You can't argue with good service. Civil Aviation Authority in New Zealand, nada, zip, nothing. So already I'm thinking, oh yeah, why haven't you said anything?
Because they don't think they have to answer to you, Gary, and that's where this all stems from.
Well, they don't. I suppose they don't have to answer to me,
in their eyes, they don't have to answer to anyone, and I think this is where the whole thing stems, because they are the compliance. Their job is to ensure compliance, and it does come across. They are very much, we are in charge. We will do what we want, and we will decide what happens.
But we're in a more transparent world, aren't we now? In the digital age, you can't get away with just stonewalling everything, or can you? I suppose they haven't, because I haven't been able to get a comment out of them, so I haven't written anything, because I wanted to write something with the comments from Bruce, and the data commissioner. So I haven't written anything because I haven't got any comments. It's all subjection if I write anything now on my part. But it immediately puts them on the naughty list, because Christmas is coming, so we can put them on the naughty list now. It puts them on the naughty list in the back.
Are they getting the annual SUAS news bugger off Christmas card?
Yes. Yeah. Well, yeah. Oh, God, a few people are.
With a picture of Bruce on the toilet. That's the one that goes out every year.
We need to make that card, don't we?
In a Santa's hat. Mostly naked, in Santa socks and a Santa hat.
No. Oh, the humanity. No. It's the bad thinking about. But surely, if so, you really do diffuse the situation if you at least acknowledge someone's email and say you're going to do something. It starts to help diffuse it. Otherwise, it just amounts to pure arrogance.
This will end with Bruce them taking it on to the next level, either getting another department involved, doing something. Mark my words, they will not have liked how this has been pushed into the public eye, and they will want to make an example of him. Sadly.
But I don't think in New Zealand itself it's a big enough. It's good Eden here, isn't it? I don't think it's a big enough story in New Zealand. I don't think there's enough outrage over it.
Not over there, no. I suppose their problem is, can they afford to have 10,000 FPV flyers emailing them every week?
And there's Squishy asking, what's happening in FPV besides Red Cat? Well, Chad's supposed to be joining us, whether he's got the time wrong or whatever, I don't know. But yeah, that is Squishy. That is, well, let's jump to that. He has asked, let us go. Rosie might want to know. Go on, Ian, you go first.
Well, I sort of missed this. I didn't. I was very busy all day, so I was catching up on Twitter and stuff. And actually, Gary, unfortunately, I didn't see it on your stream first. I saw it on Twitter first from them directly, unfortunately. Otherwise, I would have put you in the video. But yeah, and I saw this, and I did instantly think this was going to be something big. I felt there's a couple of reasons for this, and we've spoke about Fat Shark quite a lot on all the channels. Bruce has, I have, on various things. And I think we've all thought at some point they're going to get bought by someone. There's been that feeling something is going to happen. And obviously now it's Red Cat. Now, Red Cat, it's not Red Cat who make the RC trucks. People do get this confused. It's Red Cat Holdings. This is the same company who recently acquired, I say recently, last year, acquired Rotor Riot as well. So Fat Shark have been brought under the umbrella of Red Cat and will be part of the same business as Rotor Riot. And it just makes things very, very interesting, because over the last 12 months, Rotor Riot have worked extremely closely with DJI. DJI have been sponsoring videos. Rotor Riot are a main dealer for the DJI Digital FPV system. It's here. And I'll be honest, I think Rotor Riot have played a massive part in driving the adoption of this, because Rotor Riot have over 200,000 subscribers on their YouTube channel. They have their blogs, their content, their Facebook group. And in the FPV world, there aren't many places to get information all in one place. You've got JB who puts out his content, and DJI have very much capitalized on that marketing. And Rotor Riot have been a massive part of that, a massive part of that. And now they've acquired Fat Shark, and it really does mix things up. Is this a good thing for DJI? Is it a bad thing? There's speculation that DJI might have wanted this to happen, and I can see some reasons for that. Are we going to see Fat Shark change what they do? And one thing I want to mention is, Fat Shark have been developing Bitefrost and SharkBite for a little bit of time, but Greg at Fat Shark has openly said they are primarily a goggles manufacturer. They didn't want to create the next level of digital FPV. They've built Bitefrost or SharkBite in partnership with DiviMath. But it wasn't what they were staking their business on, if you get my drift, moving forward. They're still primarily a goggles manufacturer. And now, obviously, that's come under the umbrella of Rotor Riot. So it's going to be really interesting to see, is this a closed door for DJI? Are Rotor Riot going to turn that money away now and say, so sorry, we're no longer, we don't want your sponsorship? There is some irony that money DJI were giving them might have been used to buy their competitor, which I find quite amusing. Do you know what I mean? There's something could be potentially very sly and interesting. Or if you take this as the bigger picture, will Rotor Riot continue to supply DJI gear, to continue to promote it? Could we then see a set of Fat Shark goggles with DJI support on board? And perhaps this is more of a bridging than a end in a relationship. And whilst I don't think DJI are not a company that do acquisitions. There's something to be said. They've only really acquired one company I can remember, and that is Hasselblad. That's it. That's the only company they've really properly acquired over the years. So I don't see them ever have been interested in Fat Shark. But does that mean they haven't pushed a few close partners towards making a deal happen? Who knows? But it's interesting. It's really, really interesting, and it's going to mix everything up. It really is.
But of course, I'm pausing it. Isn't that overstating it a bit? It's only a few FPV goggles. But anyway.
but a small. But if you take into account, Fat Shark must have 70% plus of the analog FPV market. There's no numbers here, but let's be realistic. They would the biggest player. Skyzone are big, but I would say Fat Shark have gained okay. There's a lot of cheap stuff and a lot of people who want.
That's where I was getting.
I think
at least 50% is the Banggood brands.
Okay, if we say then serious FPV flyers, people who are interested, I'd say Fat Shark are the largest entity. Now, DJI have come along and blown, they've stolen digital. There's no question. They've got it. They've ran with it. It's theirs. But SharkBite is around the corner. It's not over. That's going to continue to be developed as well. And Fat Shark have openly said, Greg has said, don't worry, there's no changes on that today. That's still going to go ahead. So it's interesting, and the reason I think it's big is because it's a small market, but they're a big player in that small market, and that's why I think it's big. So for the FPV industry, I think it's big, but we've all agreed before that FPV is still a tiny element of the overall drone industry, isn't it?
That's an interesting comment from Drone Racer, and I don't think it's just if you look at that comment there, Louis, I don't think there can have been enough money on the table to do that.
No. People forget DJI. This is DJI's 8th revision of an FPV system. Everyone keeps saying DJI came out with the goggles in one hit. This is revision 8. DJI have been making FPV since 2013. We started with the Inspire 1, with the OcuSync. This is a revision of all of that IP. Fat Shark are not going to get there overnight. It's not even their own IP they're using. They're basing their stuff off DiviMath, and it's an external company's chipset. And digital is always going to be, you're not going to have an open HD, probably not going to have an open HD standard, because there is something called open HD, but I won't go there. But the reality is digital is, for the most part, going to end up proprietary. You're just going to have several players involved. And whether perhaps this is a move by a couple of people to try and spread DJI's compatibility out. Who knows? Who knows what will happen in the next 12 months? I know a lot of people would be very interested if a set of Fat Shark goggles turned up with DJI FPV support.
Can't be argued with, can it? It can't be argued with. What I was thinking as you're saying it is, if you look at any cartoons of people flying FPV or whatever that appear in anything that appears in the MSM, the mainstream media, it's always Fat Shark goggles. So they own the look of FPV.
And have for years, and even when you look at the sponsored video, it's the same. If you look at the DJI sponsor, there's always a set of Fat Sharks, or they've got their analog goggles or something like that. And analog isn't going away. As good as digital is, analog is not going away. It's going to be here for some time. So I think it's interesting. The bit I don't fully understand, and this is the bit I would be interested in, is the Red Cat element. Where Red Cat are gonna, as Squishy has said, where's the money going to come from? Because selling a couple of hundred, even if you sold a couple of 100,000 FPV goggles a year, that's not going to fund a multi-million-pound business. It's probably not going to even fund Rotor Riot. To run a YouTube channel like that costs money. With all of that development, all of that stuff costs money. And you need the views, or you need the subscribers, or you need the affiliates, or something to drive that back in. Now, at the moment, I think DJI have clearly been throwing a lot of money their way, and that's probably helped them along. But will that continue? So I think it's interesting when you tie up Rotor Riot and Fat Shark. I think the weirder element is the Red Cat element in the background. I think that's the bit that's a bit more questionable.
Well, that is Rotor Riot now, though, isn't it?
Yeah. They're subsidiaries, aren't they? It's just weird as if you look at companies buying up niche technology companies within the drone business. This isn't UTM. This isn't, we got UTMs falling out of our bottoms right now. Everyone's starting a UTM. This is really niche. Goggles are a niche end of the industry. Rotor Riot is still a niche end of it. And what Rotor Riot have been very good at is showing what FPV can actually do. And I think that's the real cool thing. If there's 3 videos, the one chasing the arrow, which DJI sponsored. I don't know if you guys saw that. That was wicked. The other one where he flew down the pylon at the theme park, stuff like that blows people away. And it's that cinema style FPV. But again, how do you turn that into money? How do you make a return on that?
As FX Nose says, I just want to plug my Oculus Quest into my DJI transmitter. Is that I mean, we're talking about, I wonder how many times more VR headsets outsell. I wonder how many more of those there are about than there are Fat Shark headsets.
There must be thousands, because as you say, the gamers, the TV people, the phones, because people get them. You get them on deals with phones these days, don't you? And everything, the VR headsets. So yeah, it's interesting if you look at DJI's business model. Is DJI's business model to make goggles like Fat Shark? No, they've made a set of goggles and they've put a system out there which is very, very good. But it's still a pet project for them compared to the numbers of stuff they sell, on a daily basis.
Well, I must admit, I have wondered why have they bothered making the goggles? I mean, it can be for passenger rides if you're doing commercial work and things like that. Doing the bridge inspection and things. I can see where that's where they go in there. But yeah, I have often wondered quite why they've made any goggles really.
I think it is. I think we'll see more about that in the near future. If you see some rumors today, some images have appeared online today of a potential new craft, which is the FPV one. There's solid noise that this thing is going to happen. I think if you look at DJI's history, what they like to do is build ecosystems, and ecosystems that they can then sell accessories and products off. So they've tickled FPV for a few years. They had the white goggles and they had the RE goggles, and now they've produced something which suits everyone in the sense of the product is good. The goggles aren't perfect, too big. People want them smaller, lighter, better screens. Overall, though, it's a good product. Now, the next, I suppose, move is, do they push the IP out into the industry and sit back and let others make gear for them and raking the money off that whilst retaining control of the industry because they control the IP? Or do they push forward and release 5 different designs of goggles just like Fat Shark? Because what was it? Is like 5 or 6 versions of Fat Shark goggles? You got HDO2s, Dominators. At one point, there was like 7 sets, at one time. So I just don't see DJI wanting that,
Yeah, I've never really got on with all these sort of things. It's pity that Chad isn't here. We could nailed him down and asked him directly. Yeah. And Mark, you're being very quiet. I know, Mark, that you've been. We'll come back to that, I'm sure. But I know you've been flying your Believer, because I was just a little look on Facebook and I see the photos of your Believer maiden flights. Tell us, how did those go? Microphone. There we are.
So the Believer, I have to say, the first flight was fly-by-wire stabilized flight, and I've flown a lot of aircraft, and I have to say the Believer is it's so nice to fly. I've flown a lot of planes, from jets to big aerobatics, and this thing, it just cruises. 20-mile-an-hour winds was roughly what we had at the site, and it just didn't care. It was fantastic. And the crazy thing was, I was flying for around 10 minutes. She's turning 12 by 6 on this setup, 6S, turning the 12 by 6 props. I must have been flying for 10 minutes. I think I took off with the battery around 95% or something. I landed after about 10 minutes, and I don't even think I used 5% of the battery. I mean, what the hell? So, yeah, I mean, it's easy to put together, which I find brilliant because, we were saying earlier, all the little hatches and everything, if you've got big thumbs or big hands, you can actually get your hands into this airframe. It'll swallow a beer can easily inside it, and you wouldn't know it was there for the most part. Put a few in.
And it means, sorry, I'm butting in then. We were talking with the ugly thing with Nicola earlier. So you say it'll swallow a beer can. As the ugly thing, what did he say it was called? I can't remember what Evening Above and Beyond. I can't remember what he said it was called. But the Believer will swallow the beer can, and it'll still look like an elegant aircraft. And photos and things don't do it justice. If you see one in the flesh, it looks even nicer. You know that old saw in aviation about if it looks right, it flies right. Well, it does. It does. And it does look right. And it does look much nicer in the flesh than it does in images. And you say it'll swallow those beer cans, whereas that ugly thing that Nicola was talking about will remain ugly regardless of what you put in it.
And I will admit, I've laminated the wings on mine. So when you were talking with Nicola and everything, the Believer from the motor pod to the wingtip was all laminated on my aircraft. The V-tails, they're laminated just to stiffen it all up, because I believe it should be stiff. I know it's got the carbon rods through it, but I want the wings. I don't want it to flex much. It should be fairly stiff, not a lot of flex. The only thing, it is a 2-man job to launch it, in my opinion. At the moment, I've just not got it set right. Hoping to turn it into a 1-man operation, and it'll be a nice chuck and it'll go. As we were saying, my second flight didn't quite go to plan because I didn't give it enough beans on takeoff. I was so used to flying it around on half throttle. On takeoff, just give it the beans, just punch it. And that was my mistake. So I broke a prop on that, and that ended the day. But otherwise, its glide ratio is bonkers.
Yeah, you've definitely got to think about your landing. You've got to get enough room in for it to slow down, and because that's what I've seen a lot of. I'm ranting at you, but I've seen a lot of people not taking that glide ratio into effect or into consideration, and then they just point the nose down to get it in the spot they want at the end, and they end up arriving with a hone of a lot of speed. So you've just got to plan your circuit. That's all.
Yeah, I mean, it took me. So my first come round to try and land, obviously, you know, your first one is like you're just going to try and just see what your glide's like. And at that point now, when you know, I'm just too high. There's some trees in the new test site we've got. There's some tall trees at one end, and sod's law, you've got to come over these trees, and then I've got like 100 meters to get it in, which you think would be perfect. Now, however, if you're at 30 odd meters high, you're not going to get. Chances are you're not going to get in before you meet the hedge at the other end. You've got to literally come over the top of the tree.
Crow brake.
Pardon?
Trying to use crow brakes with aileron and flaps.
No, just fly closer to the tree. To be fair.
If you bump on the tree, you don't have any problems with glide ratio because it will land on the tree.
Yeah, it's like a catapult.
It throws it back into the last field.
So I just literally came down and I skimmed the top of the tree by about 2 meters. I wasn't low to it, but I was, you know, I was a bit low, if you like. Skim over the top of the trees, kill the throttle. I'm in the field and just let it glide in. And yeah, I mean, then the foam underneath, its impact protector for its belly landing, that hard rubber or soft rubber it's got underneath.
Yeah.
Perfect. Absolutely perfect for it. And I really do like.
He's come up with what I was going to say, Flying Dreams side slip as well. But the other thing is, but of course, you'd be operating within BVLOS, so this may not apply. But should you be in a country, state, or nation that would permit you to fly BVLOS, you just go and fly. You find, because the thing's so flipping good, you find a good area to take off and land that's completely within requirements, and then you fly into wherever you've got to go, because it's only going to use 100, 200 milliamps to get you to wherever it is. So why, you know, don't restrict yourself with tiny launch and landing sites. Just go to a proper site and fly across to where you need to be. It's pointless.
I mean, there's a 2.5 meter version coming.
Yeah, got one. Yeah.
I only found out about it, a month or two ago, and I'm like, I want to see this. I want to play.
It is a fantastic BVLOS aeroplane that allows you to plan some pretty groovy flights from very well prepared areas, and you just have to apply a little bit of proper model aeroplane thinking to it, but your reward for that is the performance. You know, 5 hours in the air if you set it up properly, hectares and hectares and hectares and hectares of land that you can survey. So that's the reward for a little bit more effort on the flight side. Not much more effort, just a little tiny bit more.
Yeah, I mean, I've got 6 S16s in the front of this. No, 18s, 16s. Oh, I can't remember now. I think the 16s maybe in the front of this, and it's you know, you've got to have that battery right at the front to get the nose to tip where you want it to for the C or G. It's amazing, really, and it'll carry a kilo payload. What more do you want? What more?
If it's like when we talk about Altitude Angel, it seems like I work for them, and when I talk about the Believer, it seems like I either own or have shares in the factory. I do not know of a better fixed wing mapping platform that requires, but the caveat is it's not like it's so, because people will say, yeah, but the EB will do all that. The EB will do a huge area if you fly at 3,000 feet and have shocking resolution.
The EB suffers on several counts. One, you're correct. The EB flies for about an hour max, maybe 50 minutes. If on a good day. On a good day, you maybe get an hour out of an EB. Okay, I've never had better than about an hour. You know, the other thing about the EB is it's self-destroying. So,
is it? I don't know that.
Oh, right. Well, and either I'm really bad at planning where I land them, or they just don't take it. So I flew 2 summers with EBs doing crops in the UK. And it was the SQ version, but basically the same as the others. and that plastic underneath that plastic shield, that starts to smash to bits after about 60 hours, no matter how kind you are to it. I think I got about 60 hours 1 year and about 80 the second. Once it started to crack and go, that's it. It's on borrowed time. But then when you get to 120 hours, you send an EB for a service locally, normally, okay? And in the UK, they charge you £1,000 to service an EB.
And what do you get for that? Do you get a completely new airframe?
I'm not sure, but you know, they replace the parts that need replacing. If there's an extra cost on top for certain things, not sure. But they charge £1,000 is what I know. I mean, they'll fix the modem issues because the modems tend to go a bit, don't they, as well? They link.
I don't know. I've seen them flying a couple of times. I don't know a great deal about them. I didn't know that.
Go on, sorry.
No, well, it's but at the end of the day, so that £1,000 service is a believer, and you'll do 5. So 60 hours is 30 flights of the no. So that's what's 5 into 60? It's not 30. Heads are not working, but it's a lot less than 60 to get the same number of hours.
I was
in the air.
some big things. Yeah, I mean, I was flying some big farms during last year, and if it had been the Believer I chucked, the fields that would take the EB like 2 flights to do, and then the field next to it you've got another hour to do with a single flight, whatever. You've just chucked the Believer in the air once, you know, and it would do the field on the right, you do the field on the left, the field behind you, and the field behind you on the right, and it wouldn't land for that whole time. With EB, it's like, right, land, take the data out, do all this, do that, shake it, chuck it again, you know.
And of course,
where the Believer
takeoff and landings, because that's another advantage. So it's not you can't. The thing is, you couldn't hand it like you can an EB. You can basically hand it to a surveyor who's never flown anything, shake it and chuck it, and that's about it. So you couldn't do that with a Believer, but you'd have to have someone that you'd hope would have a little bit of announce to them, and but once they're there, then and operating, then you can cover some ground. I don't know. I can't at the moment. I don't think there's a better platform out there at the moment.
You would only
the only issue. Sorry to interrupt. The only issue is that the Believer is a hobbyist machine.
No, it's built. No, you say hobbyist. No, it's built. No.
You cannot go to somewhere and buy a ready-to-fly system with service included.
You can.
Yeah, from where? Banggood?
No, you can buy it from
someone that is assembling it on his room or on his back shed. That's the thing. It's a reliable company that provides service, and you get that with the. So it's sometimes you have to opt for a reliable service or a reliable company, and not going with the best you have for that situation. You have the best knife to cut that steak, but you have to go to the blacksmith to get you that knife. Otherwise, you just buy the knife at the hardware store. And that's the problem of the Believer.
Well, I think sorry
to pop your bubbles with the Believer. Yes, I think it's a good. I think it is a good plane, but it falls on that hobbyist wanting to be professional.
I suppose the kicker.
You're falling. Sorry, Mark. You're falling for the brochures there, Louis. I hear what you're saying. If you're a surveyor, I'm not a surveyor. If you're a surveyor that knows how to fly or is willing to spend a little bit of time, you're going to get a hoon of a lot more work done with a Believer which even if you say it's a hobbyist thing, you're going to beat the guy with the EB all day long, and you're going to have paid a lot less money to do that. It just takes a little bit of Rybat's Slender Believer, 22 miles out and back, 6S, plenty of battery remaining, £11. So yeah, and Rybat did the maths for me earlier. Thanks very much. It's what am I trying to say? I think a lot of perhaps it's time for SenseFly to get a bit grown up and make another platform and move away from the EB a little bit, something that's going to fly a little bit longer and do a little bit more. But I'm not sure that they have the will to do that. They're going to be left behind. All right, if this is the hobbyist version, I guarantee someone's going to come out with something very similar that's the professional version.
I will say this about the Believer. So if you take a hobby airframe, right? So the next thing from this, I would consider something like a Mini Talon a hobbyist aircraft. Okay. If you take a Talon and you take the Believer, right? It's the difference between the thought process in the Mini Talon versus the Believer is completely different. Okay, the Mini Talon, the servo horn connectors alone are atrocious. When you've got the rod and then you put it through a little thing and you screw a grub screw to hold a control surface on any aircraft, that to me is just bad practice. Okay. I hate it where you get the piano wire, you stick it through the grub, and you got the grub screw, and it holds it. You know what I mean? Pinches the control surface. That to me, that's just a big no from the get-go. Where the Believers are proper, what I would call pro, linkages. They're all, like to me, these are all ball link, which is how it should be. Not the only thing that's hobbyist is the fact it's the same as every other servo. You just put hobbyist servos in it. It's such versatility in that airframe. It's unreal. And I've only
versatility. Sorry, Mark. It's versatility for those that want to invest time on something that is not the core business. You have to invest time on making the plane to fly, and that is not the core business of the target of the surveyor. The surveyor wants to go and survey and get a tool that does it.
Yeah,
but it's you can the Believer, and it's 5 hours, because I think if we accept that 6 hours is about the useful daylight for mapping applications, you're hopping and skipping away from all you're ever going to need in a daylight flying airframe. If you can do an awful lot of survey. You're starting to skim survey work off light aircraft. You're starting to take it off that end. You're looking at a completely different ball game to what the EB can do. The EB can't do much more than a Phantom. Really, it can, but not to be controversial. It's not that much great of a leap. And where the airframes will go to that size. 6 hours will be the new 1 hour. Remember, 10 minutes used to be the goal for electric model aeroplanes. Then it became 20 minutes, then it became an hour, and then the multi-rotors 6 minutes, 12 minutes, 18 minutes, 22 minutes, an hour. 6 hours is going to be where fixed-wing aircraft are. I know we just have to park the whole BV loss thing. You just have to park that idea, but that's where the airframes are going to go, and then you're in. Other than the lot slower speed, you're in taking bread out of the mouth of fixed wing guys. Yeah, you really are.
No. Let's bring it for the drones, for the multi-rotors. Everybody can do a drone better than the M200 or the M600 or the M210. It's not that hard to do it.
Well,
but people go for the ease of use of those, and that's the same that happens with the Believer.
Sure. Yes.
I mean, you can make better than M210. You can make better than the M600. The problem is you can't do the camera integration as well as DJI, because it's just they just have that so dialed in. Where you can have a second controller, full camera control. For every part of the camera, DJI have that so nailed in, so easy to use as well. That's the thing when you go up against an M210.
That's on the camera side. If you want to do, if you go to the DJI partners, you can see lots of third-party adaptations for the DJI drones. I'm not speaking about the payloads. I'm just speaking about the airframes.
Right.
And yeah, it's so much easier to get a DJI than to build your drone. I can build myself a drone, and we can see the number of frames that have come and gone from the back goods of our life. And now, these days, the larger frames are almost non-existent because nobody wants them. Then you go to the extra large frames with the 30-inch props that are a royal pain in the backside to put flying right.
You're right.
So,
yeah, you're right.
I mean, only for mom and pop shops that are doing some commercial work, or very small companies that are building their own drones or their own delivers and sell the delivers. There's a guy that used to hang around on Argo Pilot, an American guy, Nathan. And that he created a company around to sell the believer with predefined payloads. That's one option, but at the end of the day, it's still a hobby grade system.
But in this world of smaller surveyors getting their Phantoms or whatever, the guy with the believer that spends that little bit more time sorting it out is going to be able to drop the cost dramatically against the EB or the believer or the Phantom Man. That's the bottom line. So if you're a surveyor and you want to be the local drone surveyor, that's going to be one way to make yourself slightly different. But we'll let's not labor the point too much. Let's bring Ian back into the conversation because Squishy has a question about DJI. He has buttons. He has buttons. He has microphones. He has posters.
I have buttons. I'm not actually on the computer, so I was putting a message on via the phone. What's he say? There is no DJI VRX, right? Only goggles. Yes, that's correct. At this stage today, it's just goggles. But who knows what's around the corner? You never know with DJI. What I can say about DJI, they are predictably unpredictable.
They've got an announce coming up, haven't they? Shortly.
There's something happening on the 10th, but I'm not expecting that to have anything with props or flies. Keep your expectations on the ground for that one.
A lot of other people are telling us it's the Mavic 3. I can't even remember what the rumor is, and two versions of it.
Yeah, that's not happening. That's can't say any more than that. But yeah, I wouldn't talk about something I would know. No, you can never say never. But look, the reality is, there's rumors today of new FCC filings for a new Mavic Mini 2. I think we said this. I think it makes complete sense that there'll be a refresh on one or two products before the holiday period. Very little tooling cost, very little expense added, something to get people spending money. And what type of money would you want people to spend in the middle of a global pandemic where people are getting laid off? Well, as little as possible. So if you're going to release a consumer model, you're going to tart something up a little bit, give it a bit of glitter here and there and make it sparkly and shine for a couple of £100. And that looks exactly like what they do. And I saw the images today and just went, I think we said it, over 3 months ago on here, Gary?
Probably.
Probably. So,
they do listen, Ian. They listen.
They do. On the pro side of things, I think we're going to see a few products in the next couple of weeks. But that's a different market. That's a different market altogether. Look, there is an announcement on the 10th. It's going to be a Ronin series because they've said that. I think I'm okay saying that. I'm not going to say any more. But
He said it.
He said it. He said it. I know there was.
said
I just remembered there was something. There's two things I wanted to talk about, and that's. Did
He-
everyone see that Everdrone thing with all the Intel sensors hanging off all around it?
Yeah, that was quite cool. It's quite
Yeah.
interesting. Intel are still doing stuff in the background, aren't they? Intel are very much still putting IP, developing IP, aren't they?
Another thing I wanted to mention while I'm trying to remember things, it's very interesting that the Civil Aviation Authority, or rather the Department of Transport in the UK, are offering a £250 cashback for electronic conspicuity. And it's not just ADSB. Yeah, also letting you get some money back on Power Flam and the Sky Echo 2 and the Pilot Aware Rosetta, which is a great thing. And Rosetta is a village just down the road from here, so I'm very pleased at that. The last house was in Rosetta, but they're showing a little bit of leadership on that whole thing by allowing multiple devices. No one else in the world's doing that. Everyone else is saying ADSB, that's it. That's your lot. Oh, and Flam now. The EU's doing Flam as well. So they're showing a little bit of leadership with what they're giving you some money back for. And it's money back for drone operators, balloon operators, microlight operators, glider operators, powered aircraft. It's everybody. We're all in the same boat, so that's pretty cool.
So what's the rules on it? So it has to be transmitting or receiving as well, Gary. The electronic conspicuity.
I think it's a transmitting one.
Okay.
I'm
just wondering, can we claim back a refund on a cube? It's got ADSB built in.
Yeah. No. But the thing with Flam and the Rosetta setup, and the Rosetta setup is pretty clever in that if you're in the UK, there's a great chain of nerds, and it's called 360 Radar. So if you are contributing to that, you'll get that for free. So that's your ADSB and your multilateration, and they're also working on mode Charlie as well, but some of those ground stations also receive OGN on Flam, and then they rebroadcast it on another frequency. They pull this all together, and they've got a chain of transmitters, and they rebroadcast that. And I think it's the only place in the world where you can get a merge of glider, balloon, all their traffic, not one or the other, one system, this and that and the other. So it's very, very cool. And it's pretty jolly cheap to have a Flam or OGM bit of kit
and it's
in your air.
£250, isn't it? They're going to give you back $250.
Yeah. And when the whole thing doesn't cost that much. So yeah, no, it's very cool. It's very cool.
Did you see the Free Fire launch? Because that's quite an interesting one as well. And there's a lot about this because there's something else happening this week. They're launching their own camera as well tomorrow. Now it's interesting because they've actually made a camera. Now, I don't know, is this in partnership with Sony? I don't know, because for this new aircraft, there's a lot of partner names. Arterion are there, Sony are there. There's a lot of big names because they're using the Sony SDK as well, and they're one of the first to get on board with this. Sony have actually been doing a lot of work. It's interesting, actually. Sony are the first camera manufacturers to take drones seriously, it seems, and drone integration. And this new aircraft is going to have the capability very much like what DJI have had. You will have that ability to be able to change your aperture, your shutter speed, your ISOs, all of this stuff we've come to expect. We all know what killed the Solo was the fact that GoPro decided to make it life hard for that edge connector on the side. And it's been camera integration that's very much held back many of manufacturers to get forward now.
Sony, they were in collaboration with Archipilot for that thing that was just a camera sort of lens, wasn't it? That had all sorts of integration a few years ago, didn't it?
They recently, I've been in contact with them. They recently discontinued that UC or UM30 camera. That was that small one that had. There were two models. One that had a zoom lens, and the other one had a snap-on lens. They recently discontinued that. Their SDK is geared towards the A7 series, mostly, but since they now launched a smaller A7, I'm not sure. I haven't checked yet if it is already. It's not supported because I haven't seen any updates on the SDK. But having the SDK on Sony cameras never was a showstopper for integrating the Sony cameras. Although Sony was very reluctant to provide data on the cameras, the G-Photo people managed to get quite a few things working. So on an open source platform, G-Photo, you could do quite a few things on the cameras. There were limitations, yes. Sometimes it didn't work, yes, but it was possible. And there are also commercials, the Sony cameras to do some smart things. I remember the DrowTag thing that would even put some metadata on the EXIF file information on the images. So not a big surprise. What I think it's happening here is that PX4 or Drone Code or whatever has been for the last few months pursuing develop an interface between Mavlink, PX4, kind of messy. It's Drone Code, so interface for cameras.
So it's messy. It's Drone Code. It's messy. That's what we're saying, Louis.
A camera API that would translate to any camera besides having Mavlink, because we have cameras on the market now that are Mavlink compliant. That is not the ideal situation. So if Drone Code opens up that door, it will be better for everyone. I'm not so sure if and how that licensing will happen. But Auterion is leading the commercial arm of PX4. They're very happy, and their PR people are
in overdrive.
Active. So when they say that the Department of Defense is all PX4, I'm not so sure of that.
No.
So let's see how it goes.
It is interesting because if you look at this aircraft, Auterion are all over it. You know, their name is everywhere. They're clearly a supporter of how much money has changed hands to get this out there. I don't know. That's the speculative me potentially, but
one of the crunches, it's not one of the 5 blue SUAS.
No.
It doesn't matter what you say. It's not one of the 5. So,
but potentially it's possibly. If you take the product, it's potentially the first drone we've seen that could really give something like an M200 or an Inspire 2 a run for its money. If it does what they say it does.
Why would you have developed something that's outside of the specification that is going to be the approved specification for not for a long time, maybe only for another year or so? It's way too big. So it's outside of the spec. So you're only going to get things approved that are easily man portable, etc., etc.
Yeah.
So
that's for military use, isn't it? Yeah, but that's not for everyone else. You know, if they want to take on the rest of the drone industry,
if you want to fly over federal lands, you need to have a blue SUAS now.
Get me a good commercial supported alternative to DJI.
I know that is. I know. Yeah, but the bottom line is, if you want to fly over federal land now, and they've moved forward the bill as well. It's moving into 2021. They've moved forward the closing them down bill, so that is moving forward. But you're right. You know, you can't. The DJI produce great machines, great support on all those other things. That's not. I'm not.
It's the first aircraft I've seen where you think, ooh, okay, if this does what they say it does, I can see M200 users considering potentially this. The fact They're not going to buy an M300 because the batteries are over 100 watt hour, as Louis has often said, for commercial operators.
No, sorry. The M210s are already already over the 100 watt hours.
The M300 is just ridiculous. It's but so there is a hole to be filled, and if this does what they say it does, no one else has produced a product in that category with that integration that this looks like it has that could really compete. So we're going to have to see, and it's $10,000. Basically, it's not terrible money.
It's not too far. It's not too far off of the cost of an M300.
A fully kitted M300 is $25K.
Come on, I'm just speaking. A fully kitted M300 can be quite more than that. I can tell you that.
With the main spec.
You can easily go lunatic. If you want to go lunatic. That's the payloads. I never take into consideration the payload cost. Because the payloads usually cost more than the vehicle itself. If a price competitive vehicle of the M300 flying better than the M300, which apparently is not that hard, with batteries below the 100 watt hour, that guy will have a field day selling them like hotcakes.
And it can use Sony E-mount lenses, and it's using Sony compatible cameras, which is there's a lot to like there for people, isn't there? There's a lot to like there. So it's clearly though Arterion and PX4 are putting a lot out there at the moment, rewriting history, probably trying to. Yes, I think
I'm not sure if they're rewriting history. I think they're going on a path which, although partially renegades their history of an open source platform, Arterion is a for-profit business. And their business is to provide development and support for PX4 platform. So they invest heavily on developers. Where it gets muddy is all the guys that went, it's so good to contribute for an open source project. And then you see that open source project, some guys that come along and develop some more and pack it and sell it for $35,000.
Based off your work, based off their work.
Am I a water heater? I just work to heat up the environment. It's crazy.
They're certainly pushing the headlines out by the hour, aren't they? That's for sure.
Well, only in our world. If you weren't in our world, you'd never have heard of them.
No, that's the problem, I suppose.
Whereas if you've heard of DJI, because you can see them down at your local Best Buy.
Is that they've managed to capitalize a lot on universities. So you see a lot of people coming on universities, having projects and master degrees using PX4 as a basis for that. That's free work for a PX4, and they're capitalizing on that.
It was always paparazzi back in the day, for those of us that are old enough.
Paparazzi is still here with the guys from Delft. TU Delft University in Netherlands.
Yeah, it was always above my pay grade and probably always will be. I haven't looked at it for ages. I'm supposed to have got an easier version now. I need to have a look. I know they had a very tiny one.
Couple of months ago, there were some conversations with ArduPilot on some paparazzi guys, and they were also planning on porting paparazzi to run on Ian's favorite controller.
Oh, that's interesting. That is interesting.
Ian's favorite controller.
I got multiple favorites, Louis. I got 3 next to me. They were going to make it run on the Vector, were they? They were going to get it to work on the Vector. That's my favorite controller.
No, that's museum. That's your museum section.
That actually, yeah, that goes into the museum at the moment. It's.
Do you know, I often think there's quite a few of the old ones I quite like that I keep around that I wouldn't mind putting on a bit of a picture frame to go on the wall.
I got one I'm going to put in a picture frame, but it's going to have to be
very dull.
cool.
Definitely go get out more if that's what you're thinking.
Don't worry. I have one that I'm not sure that you have it. A V-Stab.
A what? Sorry,
a V-Stab.
A V-Stab.
Don't you know what?
Yeah, no, not heard of that.
Those crazy expensive helicopter controllers.
Oh yes, I have heard of it. Yes, sorry. Did you see the new controller from MRO this week? That's caused quite the stir as well on Facebook.
Because it hasn't got an OSD.
Because it hasn't got an OSD, and then it blew up into the whole why hasn't Ardra Pilot got OSDs?
Oh my god! People are so ganged up on OSDs.
I thought he was going to play that. I think we all thought he was going to play it.
Oh my god! It's so bang good. That's the problem. It's people are so ganged up on bang good El Cheapo controllers that carry everything but and the kitchen sink on the controller. And now every controller that comes up and it's small, it doesn't have OSD. Forget OSD. That's not the purpose of that controller. Go and buy the $25 controller that has OSD and a kitchen sink. Oh, yeah. I didn't even try to reply to any of those conversations. It was just so.
The only thing I'll say about that controller is it's the Pix Racer Pro by MRO, and it's a nice looking thing, but $185 is a lot of money. A lot of money for a small race style controller, because that's what it is. Do you know what I mean?
It's not a race style. Sorry, Ian. It's not a race style. Making it small does not make it automatically a race controller. No. There are places that you want a very small controller that does not take 3/4 of the room that the Cube has.
Or all of it, the CUAVs is big. I got the NORA over there, and they're all lumps, aren't they? These new ones, the bigger ones.
That fulfills a niche that you need to maximize the available room and weight for the payload.
I think it's just a hard sell. I think that's the problem. At that, it's a lot.
Money, yeah.
It's the wing is.
How much do you pay
did you see that? He went forward in time then. Oh yeah, don't get me wrong. No, the CUAV, the Cube, they're all over 200. There's no question. What I'm just saying is, if you compare it to the Wing 743 or the 746, whichever one it is, that's
an F7. No comparison.
No, there's a H7 version. There's a H7. There's a H7 which is 70 quid, and I think that is the problem. Is I think the bigger controllers. If you take the CUAV X7, the NORA, the Cubes, it's established that those style of controllers with built-in vibration isolation, with the carrier boards or the differences, there's a higher price people are accepting to pay. That just is accepted. But when it comes to these small boards, which we're used to seeing as a race style controller, and I know what you're saying, it isn't one, but when we're used to seeing them as small boards as race style controllers, when it comes at that price, it's a hard sell. And I'm not saying it's not worth it. US manufactured, we know that costs a lot of money. Philip has openly said the blue Cube costs twice as much as the black because it's made in the USA. So if you take that for MRO as well, in fact, if it was made in China, it might only be $80, $90. So actually, it isn't unrealistic, but it's still a hard sell, if you get my drift.
I'm not sure. For instance, everybody goes, doesn't have vibration isolation.
Or OSD.
I have a Pix Racer on a 250 quad for 3 or 4 years.
Yeah.
And do you know how it is isolated?
No, what have you done to it? Foam pads, probably like that. Look at the foam on the back of that.
No. Just Velcro tape.
Yeah.
I used to use those adhesive pads. I used to love those self-adhesive pads until you got to get it off, and then it looks like that.
I always use Velcro as well.
Yeah. But no, I'm not saying it's a bad controller, Louis. I'm not saying it's terrible. I think it's just a hard sell.
That's so far
yeah.
Yeah.
But for the average Bang of Foam playing, a $39 controller is good enough. Yeah, exactly. I mean, that is the thing. And they're more than good enough, actually. I mean, they're amazing compared to, what used to be about back in the day.
For that plane, why do you want to put a controller on it? Fly it manually. That's how.
Fly it manually and within your model aircraft flying club within visual line of sight.
Yeah, for most of this, if you're flying model plane, it doesn't need a flight controller. It doesn't need gyros.
So, Louis, here's a question that is going to upset you and set you off. So why doesn't Ardra Pilot support more of the boards that are traditionally supported in Betaflight? He's looking at his watch because that's how long it's going to take him to reply. But look, one thing I'll say, Ardra Pilot has an amazing amount of support for boards. There's no question. I think many of us would argue that it supports too many today, actually, as it is. However, they very much not really added support for many of the common boards we've seen in Ardra Pilot. In Betaflight and others. Why is that?
Okay. You're ringing at the wrong doorbell because I'm on the side. I'm on the board. But Tridge is not from that opinion, and he has developed a strategy that you just develop a file called HWDEF and Bob's your uncle. You define the hardware on that file, and automatically Ardra Pilot gets supported on that board. So that led to the explosion of supported boards because it's quite easy to even me or you could go and support the new boards.
It's a loaded question, to be fair, Louis, because I knew what you were going to say anyway. But
no. It's I know it's loaded because my and I've said it countless times on the group that I really think we should be more focused on some specific boards. We have a new problem coming our way with the problem of the 1 megabyte brain damage F4s. So it is quite problematic that support. But like someone on the comments was saying, yes, the number of supported boards, if you count it as a list on Betaflight, is staggering. But I'm not so sure if they're all the same. Most are just the same, just change names. So different boards, I'm not so sure. The number must be no. Betaflight has more on those cheap F3s, F4s, and only recently. But come on, no code base, not PX4, no Ardra Pilot, no Betaflight, no CleanFlight, no INAV supports the features of the new CPUs. No. So we are just playing around F4s using H7s. It runs. It's the same thing as playing Sudoku and getting one of those NVIDIA 3090 cards to play Sudoku.
In SLA. Don't remember in
Yeah.
SLI, Louis. Yeah, we got 2 of them. So.
I don't think that those 3090s support SLA, but
The 3090s do, not the 3080s.
Yeah, that it was something crazy like that. But the thing is, we are just the code is not made to run on. It runs, but it's not optimized for the higher end boards. And answer your loaded question, yes, I really would like to see us moving forward to support the higher end boards and dropping the supports like we did a few years ago to the F4s and keeping up with the F7s and H7s.
Well, not even. I'd forgotten about this actually, but on the H7s, you're not even running them at full clock at the moment. All H7s are limited in ArduPilot to 400 megs, not the 480 like many of them will run.
That's the cycle. That's the cycle.
But I mean, we're not even using anywhere near what it needs at the moment, and there's still another 80 megs sitting there on most models available for them. Tridge was talking about it the other day, and it's, as you say, there's so much power in these new boards. Everyone's got a H7 now. Every board that's coming out is a H7 now.
I thought that's where they put the secret Bitcoin mining section.
Yeah, it's where I believe the reason was that there's early H7 CPUs that are 400 megs, and then the rest of the H7s are 480, and they've got to put some code in to look at which one it is. So what they've done is clocked everyone at 400 at the current situation, because they're not even using that, So.
We need room for another 2,000 parameters. We nowhere near enough parameters. I won't be happy until we've got at least 10,000. It doesn't seem. You have at least 10,000 parameters. Surely the code with the most parameters wins. That surely must be the definition.
Louis' face.
Come on, guys! You guys took the day to pull my leg. It's from the side and from the top. The 1,000 parameters and
more
board.
Yes, 10,000 parameters on a $1 board. That's what
that's what we want. Yeah, I want my board. Yeah. I want my board
with an OSD. A $1 board with an OSD, 10,000 parameters with eight speed controllers. So
there is a serious note to that as well, and that is that everyone expects something for nothing, and that's the real note. If you look at this MRO, it's actually a really nice controller. It's a very well built, USA manufactured, feature packed H7. It's 180 quid. The reality is, it's actually a bloody bargain. That's what the reality is. Yet your instant thought is, why is it so expensive? Because we're so used to cheap controllers out of China, and that's the problem. And part of the reason that sad thing has failed is that very reason. And it's going to be interesting, to see how these guys continue over the next couple of years. And there's some great gear out there if you go looking for it right now.
And on that note, what other stories have we seen this week? Going once, going twice. Oh, go on, you're talking, Mark, but it's not happening.
Mark.
The eyes are open, the mouth moves.
Oh, that's all it was.
So, back in late February, there were 11,904 CAA permissions have been issued. So that's how many they've issued since the PFAW through to the PFCO has been issued.
Yeah.
Today, there are 5,622 active. So it's a little bit more than half, but that's a lot of falling away.
Well, I'm not one of them currently because I still haven't renewed.
Well, I was going to say, anyone that wants to needs to start getting their finger out, because that time is now tick, tick, tick. Yeah. I took some flight tests today, and I'm telling people, get it in before the end of October.
Yeah.
Not November. I'm saying get it done before the end of the month, basically, because we're due a new CAP 722 in the UK. So when that comes out, everyone's ops manuals may need a bit of a rewrite, because we don't know what's going to be in there yet.
No one does, do they?
No,
Yes.
so I think it's delayed because of Brexit.
Yes.
I think
Yes.
it's being held back a little bit, maybe, because they
think
don't
everything is.
know if they're going to be part of the YASA stuff or not.
Yeah, there's been lots of shilly-shallying. There's certainly lots of movement in the fixed-wing licensing world going on at the moment. Lots of stuff for medicals, a little bit here, a little bit there. Lots of uncertainty beginning to come into things. So yeah, it would do them well to hold back on the release of that until there's some certainty, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
So it could be a lot of wasted time otherwise.
I mean, it could be a case of, because we've still not had it go through yet, I don't believe, the legislation for the A2CFC to come in.
Oh.
So that's not gone through Parliament yet, has it? Or have I missed something somewhere?
No, I think it's all been dumped out the window at the moment.
So it's going to be interesting, because that has to go through, to my understanding, so the A2CFC can kick in.
Yeah.
The PFCO, they can just rename that to the GVC. That's simple. They can just change the name for the PFCO to GVC. That's not a hassle, I don't think, because that's basically the same process that's now kind of existing. But I actually think the A2CFC is in high risk of maybe not making it when they think.
It's all unknown at the moment, isn't it? It's all completely.
Yeah. It is. You throw a dozen balls in the air and see where they all land, because I don't know.
Well, yours land on the propellers, but that's another story. All right. All righty. If we've not seen anything else, going once, going twice, dear viewer, wherever you are in the world, thank you very much for being with us. Look after yourselves, wear a mask, wash your hands, keep your distance, stay safe. We look forward to seeing you again at 2100 GMT next week. Very, very safe out there in Brazil as well there, Louis. It's a little bit worrying. Safe working. Anyway, see you again.
When are we starting the GoFundMe to get Bruce out?
To get Bruce out? Are we starting?
Yeah. We're going to start a GoFundMe.
To keep him in?
To keep him in,
yes. Keep him in. Those nice people from the NZCAA have done a smashing job with this.
I find it's just crazy, isn't it?
Yeah,
it's just crazy.
Everything's crazy. And on that everything's crazy note, cheers everyone. Look after yourself. See you next week. 21 GMT and 14 and I can't work out what time. No, 12 and 13 GMT. My old little daily news inserts. Cheers all. Bye bye.